The key concept behind the model that I advocate, and you'll hear different views. In these meetings, we don't have just our own views, although we try to intimidate all our other presenters to agree with us. And the basic model that we bring to the table, so to speak, focuses on one key word. And what's that word? Relationships? Yeah, absolutely. And what in relationships does it focus on? What's the key component of relationships? What? Affects. Yeah, everyone gets a gold star. Congratulate yourselves. Yes, relationships which create affect, because it's hard to create the full range of affects, the full range of emotions outside of human-to-human relationships. Nearly impossible. I mean, yeah, you can have experiences with a computer, you can have experiences with your car, but it's human-to-human relationships that create the full range of human affects, and that's the key. That's the key concept. Now, I want to show you how everything flows from relationships and affects. Early identification, preventive intervention, and later intervention programs, and even intervention programs for adults. First, let's think about the role of affects in the development of the central nervous system, the brain, and the mind. When a baby is born, a newborn baby, they have only a few basic capacities they bring into the world. I mean, they can look, listen, they can use their senses. They have some preliminary ability to perceive patterns, like make out mommy's face or daddy's face eventually, after a little bit of time, discriminate different voice tones, discriminate different tastes, through the difference among other sensory sensations. But it's very preliminary. Most of the brain and most of the mind is developed postnatally. Now, this made sense in an evolutionary sense. Why? Because it allowed the human brain and the human mind to adapt to its environment. That's why the newborn babies are so helpless. And that's why most advanced species have postnatal development, more so than those species that come pre-wired. So some of our animal cousins are wired with some basic patterns at birth, and they look more competent at birth, but they're less adaptable. And those that are more helpless and require longer periods of nurturing develop bigger minds and bigger, more flexible brains and better adaptive patterns. So most of our functioning is in response to the environment. Now, everyone has been concerned, not everyone, but a lot of our philosophy and neuroscience colleagues have been concerned with how does consciousness develop? How do you develop awareness that you exist as a human being, as a person? How do you become conscious? Because that's an important part of eventually the ability to be reflective. To be able to say, gee, I'm an angry person, I'm a happy person, I'm angrier today than I should be, and to make judgments, right? You have to have consciousness first. So I was reading an article in the newspaper recently on all the neuroscience colleagues struggling with consciousness. They can't find an area of the brain that produces consciousness. They can't find a combined workings of the brain that together produce consciousness. So vague concepts like emergent property of the brain, but no one knows what that means, and they're not happy with it. And some of the neuroscience colleagues are saying, gee, we'll never solve this problem. This is an unsolvable problem, the problem of human consciousness. Well, here's the secret. And you all said it. You said it a few minutes ago. The secret is that consciousness is not a property of the brain. It is a property of what? What was the magic word? Huh? Relationships and the affects they produce. So consciousness emerges from social relationships and the affects that get produced in social relationships. So the baby has some basic physiologic capacities. They can touch, they can smell, they can hear, they can see, right? But how did this basic pattern, let's say, of arousal or sleepiness, become affectively alive experiences that become the kernel of consciousness and then develop. Well, when mommy responds to the baby's looking with different textures of voice, the baby starts turning arousal into pleasurable arousal or aversive arousal. If she yells at him, it's aversive. If she's sweet and nice and her voice tingles with delight, what is it? It's pleasurable, right? These textured interactions create more variation in the affects. The voice, the movement, all aspects of the baby's abilities. These transform physiologic processes through social relationships into affects, which is that first sense of aliveness. And then as you go through the developmental stages, our functional emotional developmental stages, and you engage more fully with that big social smile, you're experiencing a broader range of affects. And then as you begin interacting with affects at our stage 3, through purposeful two-way communication, back and forth, opening and closing circles, right? Then you begin experiencing the me, the first signs having impact on the you, and the sense of consciousness takes on a more defined and differentiated capacity. And as we then move up the ladder into what we call shared social problem solving, stage 4, you begin piecing together many back and forth affective interactions into a continuous flow. And that's why Rebecca in her program tries to always get the children into a continuous flow of affective exchanges, because that's a foundation for everything that's going to come. You can't have language, and you can't be part of the world, and you can't be conscious without a continuing interaction with the world. And if you just do it episodically, 5 circles and you shut down, you're out of touch. You're like static pictures as opposed to an ongoing TV or movie. So you've got to have that continuous flow of interaction with the world. That creates problem solving. That creates pattern recognition. That helps you integrate the little sense of self into a larger sense of self. Helps unite and integrate all the different affects you're having. And finally, by 18 months or so, you have a sense of me as a person before you can even speak very much. A pre-verbal sense of self. And we find that with children with autistic spectrum disorders, that sense of me as a sense of self, that pre-verbal sense of me through the continuous flow of back and forth affect is critical for the development of the kind of consciousness, the sense of self we're going to need for higher level thinking. And how well we get the continuous flow going determines whether language becomes creative and functional or rote and memory-based and repetitive. And predicts, we feel, whether we're going to get to the point where a child has empathy and true humor and eventually is a thinker as opposed to just a memorizer. And then we go to the 5th stage where the child begins using ideas, because this continuous flow of affects allow the child to separate, in our theory, perception from action, and use images as isolated entities, and these images then get invested with affects and experiences and develop meanings. And we have true symbols. And once we have true symbols, through pretend play and through verbal dialogues, the child learns to connect symbols together and answer their W questions and answer why questions. Why are you happy? Why are you sad? Why do you want to go outside? And then we're off and cooking. And that's our fundamental 6 stages of the functional emotional capacities. All starting with relationships and affects, right? All getting to higher levels of consciousness. And then we go through multi-causal thinking, what we call gray area thinking, and then finally reflective thinking, where you can say things like, gee, I'm angrier than I should be. I agree with Mark Twain, but not Tolstoy, because Mark Twain was more similar to myself in his upbringing, etc. So that's not the first 9 levels of our functional emotional capacities. All starting with the key of affects. Now, in early identification work and preventive intervention work, we've got to get that affect cooking. What we think happens with children with autism and the full range of autistic spectrum disorders is that biologically, for a variety of reasons, some of it genetic, some of it probably prenatal experiences, etc. The connection between affect and motor planning, the ability to plan actions, as well as the other sensory experiences, is not fully developed, doesn't come in easily, doesn't respond to experience that easily, as with other children. So there's a glitch in the system. But it's not fully blocked. The main pathway seems blocked, but side roads still seem open. And so by getting heightened states of affect, cooking early in life that are pleasurable, we can develop these side pathways. And maybe in some children even open the main highway. And that's what we've been finding with many of the children. Some of it has to do with different neurologic patterns. Some children were more successful with than others, and we're always working on new ways to be more successful with more children. So you'll be hearing in our follow-up study of the subgroup of children, over 50% in our original sample, but I don't know what it is in the natural population, who we were really able to get it cooking, get the side roads or the main roads open through affect-based learning. But for affect-based learning to occur, we need our full DIR model and a full comprehensive program. And so I want to show you the first slide, which shows you the model, just for those who are not familiar with it. By the way, let me ask you all this. How many have been here before and are familiar with the model? How many are here for the first time and are not familiar with the model? Okay, well, great. So for those who are not familiar, there'll be a quick run-through. I recommend reading Engaging Autism and the Child with Special Needs, and also for the theory of affect, a book I wrote with Stuart Shanker called The First Idea, How Symbols, Language, and Intelligence Evolved from Our Primate Ancestors to Modern Humans. So those would be the priority reading. And we have a new book, by the way, just to mention, on children with mood disorders. And so Children with Mood Swings is a new book from ICTL that you want to see. And a new book that I have out that I also want to alert you to is called Great Kids. It's written about how empathy, curiosity, creativity, logical thinking, discipline, and morality and other characteristics that make for great kids and great adults, what the developmental pathway is leading to these qualities. We haven't known that before, but it all comes from affect and relationships. Okay, so here's the model. All right, your biology and your family and interactions create the child-caregiver interactions, and that leads to the functional, emotional, developmental capacities we just reviewed. And in this model, the biological, again, goes through the child-caregiver interactions, leading to mastery or lack of mastery of the functional, emotional, developmental stages. Okay, next slide. Okay, and this just shows you in our evaluation in the DIR model, we evaluate everything. So you have to know, in order to get the child's affect cooking, let's say a child is very hyper-reactive to sound or touch, you've got to know their individual differences. That's the I in the DIR model. Okay? If you want to reach a child who's 4 years old, is he working on just engaging? Is he working on just regulating his system? Is he working on two-way pre-verbal communication? You got to know where he is so you can meet him at his or her level, right? So you meet him at his or her level, you tailor your interactions to his profile. Is he sensory, overreactive, underreactive, better visually, better with sound? You know, how's the motor planning, etc. And then you create the R, the learning relationships that are tailored to the child, and harness it. And that's where you harness the child's natural affect. And you always follow the child's lead, but that doesn't mean you don't challenge the child. You get playfully obstructive. You get these circles of communication cooking any way you can. Always having fun, always being silly, always being impish, always appealing to the child's sense of adventure. Now, I want to show you briefly two videotapes where we're harnessing affects. One with a young child, who very much could be part of our preventive intervention work, and then of an older child who's part of the follow-up study, who's been one of the children who really got cooking and really did very well, just to show you what happens and how you work with the affect system. So can we have the first videotape, please? We're going to shift now to the first video. That's going to be case number 4 on the DVD.
Look, 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 look. Look who's up there. Who's that? Barney.
Alex.
Sweet boy.
Come here, sweetie. Look. Old MacDonald.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
Right.
E-I-E-I.
Alex.
Boo Boo Bear.
Okay, come back, sweetie. I know that's you, huh? Is that you? Come here. Come on. Let's go play. Come on. Oh, MacDonald. Oh, you know that. Is that Mommy? Is that Mommy? Mommy's getting out? Out. Hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy. Should she go back in? Hi, Mommy. Mommy. She's going to go in? Oh, no, you're going to get out Daddy. Oh, that's a car. Could Daddy go back in?
Entice, don't intrude. Entice, bring him in, let him be the assertive, let him do to you.
Okay.
See, when he's being avoided, the temptation is to grab him, do to him,
Right.
stimulate him, and only makes him more avoidant.
Got it.
When you entice, you put the fish in your mouth, you flirt with the dolly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then he comes over to you, and he comes into you, and then let him take that extra step into you. The key thing for him now is pulling him in where
Right.
he's in charge of his body, where
Right.
he's in control, and we're constantly enticing and wooing him in.
Got it.
So that he becomes more comfortable with controlling the warmth and the intimacy.
Got
This
it.
is all about engaging, it's all about intimacy, it's all about him feeling comfortable with intimacy.
Okay.
And he has to feel in charge of that. So we entice, we woo, he wants to move away, he moves away, we entice him back, but we let him be in charge of the body.
Right.
He wants to kick the dolly away. Oh, bad dolly, you're kicking the dolly away.
Right.
Okay, he wants to feed daddy, that's great.
Okay.
So we're enticing. We will sometimes take his little thing in his mouth and put it in our mouth to entice him, because then he'll come to us.
Right.
E.
Okay?
Hey. E.
That's it, a little ee game. That's it, making sounds at each other. Keep that up, Daddy, that's wonderful. That's beautiful. Yeah, take it out. Well, you say mine, he's got to say mine. You got to say mine.
Hey.
I want a kiss and I'll give it to you.
Have a kiss?
Give me a kiss and I'll give it to you. Give me a kiss and I'll give it to you.
Have a kiss?
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait, no,
boy.
don't
Have
hold him,
another
don't
kiss.
hold him, don't hold him, don't hold him.
Have another kiss. More. More kiss.
Thank you.
More kissy.
Oh, that was a juicy one.
More kissy.
That was a juicy one.
Can I have another one?
That's
Can
great.
I have another cookie?
That's great. Oh,
Can Daddy have a cookie?
oh, yes.
Thank you, sweetie. What else is in there? Another one. Can Daddy have one?
Ooh.
Mmm. Ah! 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 You got my cookie! What else is in there? Cookie? Thank you.
Oh, that's a good kick. What a good kicker you
Atta
are.
boy.
You kicked me. Ooh, now I need a kiss to make me feel better.
I'm so sad. Can I have a kiss? 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 Can I have a kiss?
Yeah. Oh, I saw a kiss. I saw a kiss. I saw a kiss coming.
Can I have a kiss? Can I have a kiss?
Oh, that was a
Attaboy.
nice one.
Good
That was a hug.
boy.
That was a good one.
All done.
Yuck.
All done. You want it back? He's going to have to guess which hand it's in. He has to guess which hand it's in. Which
Where
hand?
is it?
Which hand is it in? Oh, which hand is it in? Which hand is it in? Which hand? Say mine.
You got it.
Oh. This demonstrates how we want to work. The importance of getting that, following the child's natural interest, pulling him, enticing him, but you challenge also. You don't just follow the lead. that's your opening to challenge the child into that interaction and get more circles of communication cooking, and then getting words cooking. So when the child begins to use words, they're using it meaningfully to get the cookie, to give you a kiss, to give you a hug. Now we're going to show you an older child, a teenager, who was one of the successful children who've done very well, and you'll be seeing this child's brain functioning later, and Serena will be reporting on him in the follow-up study first thing this afternoon. So this is just an example of one of the children who's done very, very well. So we can have case number 15.
In your opinion, which is what we wanted to hear, and how you feel about things. And so what do you think about yesterday's events and the way this election turned out?
I didn't like the turnout.
Yeah.
4 more years of terror, I guess.
Is that how you feel, that it's kind of?
I don't know. You look at the man, and I look at the man and I see an idiot. I mean, he massacres English language in almost every speech he makes. I saw a really, really dumb commercial. Mm-hmm. It's about this woman, and she's saying her daughter lost her sister or something, mm-hmm. and then she goes with George Bush, and George Bush knew about it, and he hugged the girl, and they're saying, Bush is so caring, let's vote for him. And, I mean, in public, everyone's going to do that for a photo op. Mm-hmm. I mean, just because Bush hugged a little girl in public doesn't mean you should vote for him. Just because you think he's compassionate, mm-hmm. even though he doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't mean you should vote for him. I mean, we attacked Iraq with no good reason. We found Saddam Hussein in a hole. We haven't found weapons mass destruction for the simple reason there's none there. And they never really attacked us until let's count the time a long time ago. They had nothing to do with it. They had nothing to do with 9/11.
How do you feel when you see those pictures on TV, or have you seen the Michael Moore movie?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I liked it.
What'd you think? Yeah, what'd you think about it?
He over-exaggerated a few things, but I liked it. There's a few things I didn't know about it. I did not know how many of those worthless countries were in our coalition of the willing, like Puerto Rico and Morocco. I mean, that was pretty ridiculous.
Well, we were reaching.
Yeah,
we were definitely reaching. Yeah.
Well, no one wanted to do it because everyone knew there's no point. I mean, the moment we went in there, we seized the oil lines. We protected the oil more than anything else, and then we get a pipeline through the Caspian Sea right into Iraq. I mean, what was the war for?
Now, I have to say his political views are his own, don't represent Israel. Although they may represent some of you and not others. But you can see this is a sophisticated young man who's finishing up high school and getting ready for college, and has strong views, good abstract thinking, a sense of humor, has lots of friends and relationships. And many of the kids, almost all of them, interestingly, and that Serena will be reporting on later, and Jim Stevens will be showing you the brains of, are very strong on empathy and warmth and social relating and humor and qualities that you would think would be hard to develop in children once diagnosed with ASD. So we're excited, and we want to obviously try to help all children achieve this, but neurologically, we're probably dealing with many different patterns. Some where it's easier to open the side roads or get the main highways cooking and get that affect connection cooked up, and others where there are more severe blockages, or where the other parts of the mind, auditory processing and language or visual spatial processing or motor planning, is more severely affected. So even when we get the affect hooked up, because many of the children who don't have as high level of language, have some language, they become very warm and loving. But we can't quite get the language to that level of abstraction. And that may be because of the language processing areas have biological challenges in addition to the core challenge of what we call the affect connection, or the affect diathesis hypothesis of autistic spectrum disorders. So we would encourage our neuroscience colleagues to look for those connections between affect and the other parts of the central nervous system. And if you think of the latest research findings between showing that the problem is not in one area of the brain for children with autism, but in the connectivity of the different parts of the brain, affect, or we feel, provides the basis for that connectivity occurring early in life. Because when a baby begins just, for example, turning towards mommy's voice and looking at her face, why is the baby doing that? Because there's pleasurable affect associated with her voice and face. So he turns to look, right? But in turning to look, he's looking, he's listening, and he's turning. Motor planning, vision, hearing, and all coordinated by pleasure, right? As the baby uses the different parts of the central nervous system and the mind together, and later on to do pretend play and to think, to perceive complex visual patterns, as each of these become invested with affect, you're using many together, it's the affect that gets you to use many of them together. And we feel that creates the connectivity. So where that's not present, we feel the lack of connectivity may be a downstream effect of this primary problem with the affect connection, not necessarily something that's pre-programmed genetically. Because in the children who do well, they have very good interconnectivity. And in fact, this leads to our philosophy and our approach to early identification and preventive intervention. I'm now going to report on 2 ways we're approaching early identification of children with ASD and other problems. And let's turn to, in terms of PowerPoints, the social emotional growth chart, which is number 3. If we can turn to that grouping and just get the first one up there. Our social emotional growth chart is a series of questions. It's now put out by PsyCorps, part of Hardcore Assessment Incorporated. It's been field tested on a huge number of children in a naturalistic population across the country. It's also part of the Bailey kits. The new Bailey kits has the Greenspan Social Emotional Growth Chart as part of it now. So now pediatricians can chart emotional growth the same way they do height and weight. And it's a 10-minute questionnaire that parents answer, and the questions simply have to do about these early milestones, the functional emotional capacities of regulating, engaging, two-way exchange of emotions, shared social problem solving, using ideas and connecting ideas together. It's that basic, and it's very straightforward. And so it's next slide. As I mentioned, easy to administer, quick to take. We call it the SEGC. Next slide. This just shows you the areas we ask questions about, which I've already reviewed with you. Next slide. And here's what you see. The 45-degree line is healthy development. Some kids make quicker progress. Some kids slower, but keep cooking. And with children with autistic spectrum disorders, you see that they start off and then they get further and further away from the 45-degree norm line unless we preventively intervene. Next slide. With regression, the slide away from the healthy developmental pattern occurs a little bit later. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is just providing some details about the cutoff scores and how we figured out the sensitivity and specificity. Next slide. Okay, pretty interesting. To distinguish autism from typical development, the social emotional growth chart has a specificity of 90% and a sensitivity of 86.6%. Now, for those of you who are familiar with test tools, that's pretty darn amazing. Next slide. Here's how it compares with other instruments. You got the ADI, the ADOS, which are the standard ones used clinically to diagnose autism, ages and stages, chat, etc. So you can see that this short questionnaire on the functional emotional milestones, normed on a big population base, now part of the Bailey kit, and also obtainable as a separate instrument and as a tool. So it's marketed by Psychor both ways. Is a very good and quick way of screening early on in life, and is very easy for parents to fill out, and should be part of, we believe, all early childhood and education and pediatric practice. And parents could use it themselves, actually. In our book, Building Healthy Minds, we describe typical development and these milestones, and so parents are often on the firing line. They can make these determinations quicker than anyone else. So that's one way we have. Parent-based way, which actually I like, because I think parents have the knowledge, and they should be in the driver's seat. Then we're also doing a study of videotapes of children who were diagnosed with autism or autistic spectrum disorders later on, age 3 or 4 or 2.5. And we have videotapes from when they were babies. And our approach was guided by our model. So we were looking for a couple things. We were looking for, one, the ability to do multiple things together, because that would show connectivity was developing or not developing. So we hypothesized that children with at risk for autism would maybe be able to do one or two things, but not a bunch of stuff together early in life. And two, we were looking for social interaction, opening, closing circles of communication, social initiative, and obviously other signs of early affect getting cooking, like smiling, etc. Okay? Now, we're still not completed with this study, but we have some preliminary data to share with you. And Rebecca Landa will be sharing with you shortly, I think, more data from her studies, which have taken, related but have their own orientation. Every serious investigator has their own orientation to these things. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay. Next slide. Okay, here you see that purposeful interaction, the purple is the children with ASD, and the red or maroon are the typically developing children. So here you see differences in purposeful interaction when they got started. The children who were developing typically got started much earlier, before 10 months. The children with ASD started having their first purposeful interactions much later. The first social smile was different. And reduplicated babbling and complex babbling, you can see it quite different in terms of ages at which they got started. So some of these basics, which are driven by affect, come in much later with children with ASD. We see them much, much earlier. Jim Stevens will be reporting that, for example, at 6 months, the ability to take initiative, to initiate social interaction in a purposeful way, is present in many typical babies, but not present in the majority of children with ASD patterns. Next slide. This just summarizes what I just told you. About 70% of the children with typically developing showed their first purposeful interaction before 10 months. At the same time, 70% of the ASD, children with ASD, showed their first interaction much later. Social smiles, etc. Next slide. Here's where we look for the complexity. Eye contact alone, eye contact plus vocalization, plus leg movement, vocalization, and movement. So we're seeing that the baby's ability to develop this connectivity we're talking about, mediated through affect. Next slide. Here, look at the difference in the last column between the purples and the reds. When we look for each one alone, we don't get huge differences. But when we look for the ability to do all three, and this is by early in life, this is before 5 months of age. This is often in the first 3 months we can observe this. The baby's ability to move and vocalize, etc., to do a whole bunch of stuff, is a big discriminator in these things. As far as I know, Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only study that's looking at it from this perspective. You know, the multiple versus the single. Is that true, Rebecca? Because you know better than I do, probably. Well, the multiple, like the ability to look, babble, and move at the same, and vocalize at the same time. Huh? Yeah, let's say in kids under 4 months. Is anyone else doing that? Rebecca says no, no, no. So I'm delighted because I don't specialize as much as Rebecca does in the early identification area, because we're trying to work on so many fronts at once. So thank you for confirming that. That was my impression. But that comes again from the theory, right? The theory that affect promotes connectivity. So we see differences when we look at affect-mediated things like purposeful interaction and circles of communication, and we see differences, obviously, with the first smiles, etc. But we see differences, and this is a more sophisticated lens, with the multiple, the coordination of your nervous system versus the single. So I encourage our colleagues to maybe build on this pilot study. Okay, we can turn off these slides. Now, next we're going to go to the, and I mentioned our CDC ICTL collaboration report has a number of principles of early identification and preventive intervention. Mainly that it should be broad-based and not just be for autism alone, but be for any kind of challenge. If you use our social emotional growth charts, a simple parent questionnaire, you're screening not just for autism, but any sort of delay or challenge. And we don't want to say, well, the child doesn't meet the criteria for early risk for autism, but, let the child's language problem or social interaction problem or family dysfunctions get missed and not worked with. I mean, that would be kind of silly. So we want a broad approach that looks at all these things. A family's dysfunction may be the most important predictor of later dysfunction. It may be behavioral problems, not autistic spectrum disorders. So we don't want to exclude children who require help. So by looking at healthy development as your model, the adaptive capacities, and any deviation from healthy development should be a source of further investigation, further evaluation, and appropriate preventive intervention, not just autism alone. So autism should be part of, and we shouldn't have a rush to diagnosis. We should note the delay, the area of functioning, and take a functional approach. By a functional approach, meaning relationships aren't cooking, early communication's not cooking. This puts the child at risk maybe for a number of things, and not say, well, is he definitely going to develop autism or else I won't do anything. A functional approach puts the diagnosis on the shelf, considers multiple diagnoses, and you hope to prevent them with your early intervention strategies. And that's what we emphasize in the CDC Ethical Collaboration Report. If we are fortunate in identifying risk factors of any kind early, and let's now go to the can autism be prevented, number 2. For children who have family dysfunction, we obviously want to give support to the family. That's the R part of the DIR. For children who have language delays or processing problems, we want to work on that system. But the key to early preventive intervention, the absolute key, which I will bang on the table even with my bad disc, is you must not and cannot ever focus on single behaviors. Because if you do, with a 6-month-old or 8-month-old or 18-month-old, you may be digging the hole deeper. You've got to promote healthy overall development. And then emphasize what needs to be overcome, such as, getting that affect, getting that interaction, cooking. Because if you do more of a good thing, you can't go wrong. But if you overfocus on a symptom and ignore the foundations of healthy functioning, you may iatrogenically, that means medically, be producing a problem and making it worse rather than better. And I say this with great discomfort because I've seen kids who at 18 and 20 months could have really gotten cooking and became more problematic, more rigid, more memory-based, more echolalic, because single behaviors were focused on and we lost the relationship building potential of that child. And we lost the family, we didn't do the family support that was needed. So approaches that are too over-focused, I worry about them being implemented early in life. I worry about them being implemented later in life too, but early in life it's especially problematic. Next slide. Here you see, just for the children with at risk for autistic spectrum disorders, the early signs like lack of sustained attention, and the associated symptoms of aimlessness or self-stimulatory, and what we want to encourage. Same thing with engagement. Next slide. In each of these, what we want to encourage. And I'm not going to go through them, read each one to you. You have them in your handouts. But we want to encourage basically healthy development, the functional emotional capacities that I talked about before. And the early sign of ASD is the lack of that, and the symptoms are clearly related to that, as you'll see in your third-hand column, as you can read. Next slide. Same thing when we get to using ideas. Do you create new ideas? The early sign is scripts or memory-based use of words, echolalia, other forms of repetition, and we want to obviously encourage creative use of ideas, meaningful affect-based use. So we get stuck behind the door and the child says, move, move. Talking about what the child wants to eat or do. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, we can stop those slides. Oh, wait. And there are different games you can play. Like the smiling game, the babble game, and these are described nicely in Building Healthy Minds and in Engaging Autism, to promote healthy affective development in infants and young children. So the key is building healthy foundations by following a child's lead, tailoring to their individual profile, even in a 4-month-old or 6-month-old, and getting that functional emotional developmental capacity cooking, And there's a million different ways of doing it. There's no one right way or wrong way. But there are some games that are tried and true. You know, peekaboo works well. Little imitative games work well. The main thing is the continuous flow. Don't just do it for 2 minutes. Do it for, you know, as long as the child can stay with you, and then go relax with the child, and then bring them back and get it cooking again, whether it's a 4-year-old or a 4-month-old. You gotta get it cooking. And you know when you get it cooking, because you got the gleam in the eye. And interestingly, in the children, whether it's a baby or a 4-year-old, the gleam in the eye and the relating comes first before language and before cognition. It's easier to get cooking. So we have loving children who are not yet verbal, but they're warm and loving and happy little guys or happy little gals. And some of the children who had the most severe neurologic challenges, who are now 10 and 12 years old, and the parents have hung in there, we're seeing them use words and phrases and, most importantly, be happy. Enjoy what they're doing. One little girl who ice skates just thoroughly enjoys herself. And they don't have a lot of the sequelae. They're not hurting themselves. They're not having the sleep problems. They're not having the behavior problems, the impulse control problems. They're not hitting. They're happy campers, even though their language may be, we haven't solved that riddle yet. So that's the approach.